Alright, we're going to start our battery service lab and go over battery service with our 2003 Honda Civic shop car. So I've got our shop task sheet here for us, and I want to point out that lead acid batteries have 36% sulfuric acid and 64% water. And just to remind you guys that the electrolyte in the batteries is highly corrosive and can be explosive. So we need to be very careful when working around batteries, as well as to never cause a spark or flame near a battery, because we don't want it exploding. And you want to make sure to avoid getting electrolyte in your eyes and on your skin or your clothing. Because of those precautions, you'll see that I have my safety glasses on. I'm wearing nitrile work gloves, and I also have a shop apron on as a sacrificial layer of clothing in case anything were to happen. I don't think it will. Usually we're pretty good and careful about handling the batteries, but can't be too safe here. Okay, so if we go ahead and start filling out our vehicle ID block, we've got a 2003 Honda Civic. License is NA. VIN, we'll get that later. Odometer, we'll get that later. Maroon for the color. And just like we've discussed before, we've got a front wheel drive. It's an automatic transmission. It's a 1.7 liter 4-cylinder. The MIL is not on. Ignition is coil on plug. We got a multi-port fuel injection, and it is an OBD2 or 96 newer computer control system. So we're going to take a look at the identification and condition of the battery and some of the features of the battery, and then we're going to look at some specific components. So this one might be kind of hard to see yet, but we're going to look for a guarantee to see how long it's warranted for. This one we can see right here is 100-month limited warranty. So we would write that down on our lab sheet. This is a 12-volt battery. You have 12, 6, 24, 36, and 42 volt options. For the most part, most of us are going to end up checking 12 volts, unless you're doing something different like a diesel or an old motorcycle that might have a 6-volt battery or something, as well as a brand name. And you may have noticed that that is a Honda branded battery. So we will put down Honda for brand name, check 12 volts, and guarantee will be other, and I'll write 100. Overall condition of the battery, it's a little bit dirty, but it is working, so I'm going to say okay. And then we have top terminals. Some other information we're going to want to look for on the battery is going to be right here on the label. Let me see if I can adjust my lighting. We've got 500 CCA for cold cranking amps and 85 RC for reserve capacity. And it is a group size 51 battery. So on our lab sheet, we have cold cranking amps of 500. The cranking amp is not listed, so we're going to check NA. The reserve capacity was 85, and the location is under the hood. Alright, let's take a little bit more detailed look at the battery itself, just you guys for a better view here. So the overall battery case, it's kind of hard to see. There's an insulating cover on it that we got to pull off yet, so we can either save that for later, or if we take a look at our options, good, bulge, cracked, or leaking. don't see any bulging sides. There's no wetness around the base of it. So we can call this an okay battery case. Sorry for the shaking. So we will check. Good. We're going to take a look at the negative cable. We need to make sure that we identify the actual symbols on the battery, negative and positive. You'll see that we can't exactly go by color here since they're both, one's black with a white stripe and then these ones are white, but we don't have a red, so we can't just go by color. Negative terminal, it's tight, but it is not clean. So I'm going to go ahead and check corroded, and then we will take a look at the post. It's also a little bit corroded, so I'm going to check corroded. We're going to do the same thing for the positive cable here and the post, and we can see that it's also a little bit corroded as well, so we're going to check that. The hold down hardware is this right here. There's a long J hook. This is a little plastic harness clip. So there's a long J hook with a nut, and then this bolt goes right into the upper radiator support here to hold it down in place. It appears to be a little bit on the loose side, but it is there. So we'll go ahead and we'll check loose. Accessory ground or pigtail. We've got one wire coming off the negative. On many vehicles, you might actually see two. However, this one might be kind of hard to see. Let me see if I can get you in position. If we look down, right there, and follow, there's a wire underneath there, right in that opening there. That goes over into the shadows. You see it down there by the corner of the battery tray. So our negative cable goes down to the body, and then there's another cable that goes from the body over to the transmission housing. So we do have a body ground and an engine ground. It's just that the point of connection, the common point of connection, is underneath the fuse box here. So we are going to say that that is present. And then the electrolyte level, we are going to skip. So we're going to put NA there. We'll flip our sheet over, and this is where we need to talk about some battery service tools that we might need. Okay, let's go ahead and talk battery tools. We've got obviously our lab sheet, but I've got a 10 millimeter 1/4 inch drive on a ratchet here. I've got a 10 millimeter ratcheting wrench. This is a special 10 millimeter battery wrench. And then this is a 5/16 or an 8 millimeter battery wrench. These ones have torque limiting capabilities, so they're automatically set to limit how tight you can tighten the battery terminals. However, because the heads are as big as they are, sometimes they have a hard time working on all terminals. I've got some battery terminal protector that we'll be using, some battery terminal cleaner. This is the cool kind with the acid indicator, so it'll change color if there's battery acid present. This is a battery terminal spreader pliers to spread apart battery terminals. To open them up. This is a battery terminal puller. Sometimes they get stuck down, and so we need to use a puller to pull them off. This is a side terminal battery brush. This is a post terminal battery brush. These ones get beat up pretty easy. This one is also a post terminal cleaner, except instead of wire bristles, it's got like straight edges or blades on them. And then there's even a spot here for the side terminal ones too. Got to be careful with this one. If you get too aggressive with it, you can do some pretty serious damage and over enlarge your terminals with that one. Also, we have a memory saver for plugging into the OBD2 port so that we can keep power to the ECU while the battery is disconnected for servicing. We're going to need a key to start the vehicle to verify that we've got everything hooked up and correct again. We're also going to need a booster pack for the memory saver. We are going to need our Accuracy Plus battery tester, some paper towels, and a fender cover to avoid getting anything on the vehicle. Okay, so those are some of our basic service tools that we might use in this lab. You might use some, you might use most. And we do have more for other situations, but these will be the most common ones. Okay, the next step after the battery inspection is we are going to use our Accuracy Plus to do a battery test. A little bit more involved than the quick test from a previous lab. So we're going to go ahead and get this connected up. Remember that when we're making connections to a battery, we're going to do positive first. I'm going to try to make sure I clip right onto the lead terminal of the battery itself there. And then I will do negative. The clamps will wiggle for a good connection. So here we are at the tester. I don't want to do a system test. I want to do just the battery test. So we're going to make sure it says battery test up here. Then we'll press go. It's going to ask us to wiggle our clamps. We'll take note of our battery voltage here at 12.65. That's pretty good to start with here. And then we press go. We got to set our CCAs, which is 500. What do you know? It's already set. And we'll press go again. It's going to put a load on the battery, and then it's going to put a second load on the battery, and then it's going to monitor the recovery of the battery. And then based on that, it's going to give us a rating, in this case, a good battery. So I'm going to set that down for just a moment, very carefully. On our lab sheet here, we are going to note our CCAs in the actual voltage of the battery as well as the condition, so we can recall that the condition is good. And then if we look at our tester, we can scroll for results. Here our OCV, or open circuit voltage, is 12.65. And our CCAs is 436. So we will write that down. That's 436 and 12.65. So once we're done with the tester, we need to make sure that when we're breaking connections to a battery, it's negative first. So I'll disconnect the negative, then the positive, and then we're going to want to wrap this up in its case, return it back to the instructor so that other people can use it when they're ready for it. Okay. We are not going to be testing the specific gravity of the electrolyte, so we are going to skip step 4. Do be sure to have an instructor check and conversation though. And we are going to go down to installing the memory saver. And that is going to be in preparation for removing the battery. So we'll meet you over by the driver's side door to talk about installing the memory saver. Alright, so to hook up our memory saver, we need to find our DLC or data link connector in the vehicle. Usually it should be somewhere within 24 inches of the driver's seat and steering wheel. This particular vehicle, it's right here. And so what we need to do is take our memory saver cable, make sure that we have it the right way because it is not symmetrical. And very carefully, without knocking you or anybody else over, we got to get in here. Carefully line that up, hook that in, and we can see we've got a light indicating that there's power in the connector. You'll also notice that I have the booster pack laying on the floor here, and the booster pack has a cigarette lighter plug in right here. So we can plug that in, and then I can turn the booster pack on and verify that our red light is still on. And so now when I disconnect the battery underneath the hood of the vehicle, this booster pack, currently sitting at 13 volts, will supply power to the computer to maintain memory such as fuel adaptations and throttle positions and whatever else it needs the keep alive memory for until we get done servicing the battery. Now that we got the memory saver hooked up, it's time to go ahead and start the process of removing the battery. Just like before, anytime we're breaking a connection to the battery, we want to do negative first. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen the negative battery terminal here. And I want to be careful that this end of my tool doesn't come down and touch the positive terminal. So you notice that I've got it fully wrapped into my hand so that I can't accidentally bump it because I'm pretty close. I might get lucky or be able to use a ratchet here. Well, it looks like my bolt's spinning, so I'm going to need two. There we go. So once I have that loose, I can usually twist and pull and lift this up, and you can see some of the corrosion and junk that's been growing in between the battery terminal clamp and the battery terminal post. I'm going to want to kind of push this off to the side so that it can't come back in, because the cable's got a bit of a memory. I don't want it coming back and reconnecting with the negative unintentionally. And we'll do the same for the positive. Now, because we do have the memory saver, it's still important that there is power on circuits and everything. So to prevent the short or to the draining of the booster pack, we need to make sure that this battery positive cable clamp here doesn't touch any ground or bare metal while it's off and disconnected from the battery. So we have to be careful about that. There is another wire that goes down, so this one's pretty stiff. It's probably not going to go too far, so I'm going to just, there's a lot of plastic in the area, so I'm just going to push it down like that for right now. And then now it's time to take out the battery hold down. You might be inclined to go ahead and loosen this, but if you look, we've got a fair amount of rust, and these are fine threads. I don't usually have a whole lot of luck with those, so I'm going to go after the shorter, a little bit more covered one here. Okay. So I got that one out. That was nice and easy. And then I should be able to lift this up, kind of like lift down and unhook. And then so here's my J hook here. Probably what I'll do is while this is out, we will soak this with some rust penetrant, put this in a vise, and we will clean this up so that the nut goes up and down the threaded portion a lot easier. Making it installed a lot easier. That will also allow us to tighten up the hold down so that it properly holds the battery and doesn't allow it to shake and vibrate as you drive down the road. We've got a protective case that can come off and go off to the side, and now the battery can come out. If it's a big battery or a heavy battery, that's where we want to get a battery carrying tool. I didn't have any out on a cart because I knew this was kind of a small battery, and I didn't want to drag this video out with too many extra details, but a lot of times the bigger batteries will have a carry handle already installed on them, but we do have a few battery carry tools if you need. So we'll cover that in a later video. But for right now, I'm just going to take this battery, pick it up, hold it flat and level. I'm going to set it down. I got a piece of cardboard. I set it down on, which will make my cleanup after this lab a little bit quicker and easier. So this is where we're going to go ahead and clean the battery. So I'm going to take my battery terminal cleaner here. I'm going to spray down the battery. You'll notice that it comes out yellow, but then there's certain spots on the battery that turns pink or red right away. And that's that acid indicator working and showing you that the red is where the acid was. It's also currently neutralizing that acid to make it easier and safer to go ahead and wipe up. Now that we've got it out of its case, you can see the sides and the ends are clean and straight, and the battery case is in overall good condition, but you can also see we had some seepage from the caps that could stand to be cleaned off here. So let's go ahead and clean the battery now. I like to neutralize the acid before I clean the terminals here. That way I don't end up with a paste mixture. Not something you blow off with compressed air. And I don't want that acid on any of the tools either, getting blown around and flung around by a wire brush. I get all the cracks and grooves and crevices and be as detailed as possible here. We don't necessarily have to buy a special battery cleaner. We could just use baking soda and water to clean this as well. But I really do like the acid indicator because that kind of gives you a sense, so you can kind of tell just how much is kind of seeped or come out of these caps over time. Alright, so now that our battery is clean and exposed, acid's been neutralized, we're going to want to clean up these terminals a little bit. So to do that, we can use our battery terminal cleaner brush here. And when we do this, we're going to go clockwise down, clockwise up. Don't change direction. If you change direction, that damages the brush inside and then it doesn't clean very well. Kind of like how it's hardly noticeable that it did anything to the negative here. Okay. It doesn't have to be super duper bright and clean. We want to avoid doing too much because then it could undersize our battery terminal and make obtaining a good connection afterwards more difficult. Okay. So I'll clean it like that, and then I'll come back and we'll wipe off the terminals. Use my damp rag so that way it's not really producing a whole lot of dust. Okay, so now our battery is ready to go back in the car, but we got to go back to the vehicle and address those terminal clamps. So back at the vehicle, we're going to take the other end of our brush. Similar to what we did, we're going to go clockwise in, clockwise out. This one has been damaged a little bit. It's not quite the diameter it used to be before. So I may have to modify my technique to get it to clean all the way around. We would do the same to our negative here. Now we're going to have better luck with our negative because it's smaller than the positive here. We want to go clockwise in, clockwise out. We could try this tool on the positive here, see if this gets us any better. Again, we want to be careful that we don't go too far and take out big gouges or oversize this so that it doesn't fit anymore. You do the same for the -2. Yeah, this one gets caught. You don't want it peeling off shavings. This might be a good time too to wash out the battery tray with all its debris and ooze in it. So while the battery tray, battery cover, and battery are finishing drying, we're going to go ahead and attempt to free up the nut off the J-hook so that we can better tighten our battery hold down. So I've got it mounted in a bench vise here, and I'm just going to take my 10 mil and see if I can get it on there. It's kind of rusty. And see if I can turn it, and it doesn't want to turn. Notice that the threaded portion is not in the vise, so that way I can't damage the threaded portion. But it's pretty stiff and it doesn't want to turn. I could soak this down with rust penetrant, but that's kind of a slower way to go about it. And since we are far from the battery, I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of heat to see if I can get the nut to expand and run it off the end of the J-hook here. I use just enough to see if I can get it moving. And then, I want to be careful. Here we go. I want to be careful I don't require too much force to the point that it twists and snaps my J-hook. Also, I got to work quick while it's hot. Every second it's cooling down, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. So I want to work quickly, but carefully, because I don't want to burn myself either. The socket is a little bit warm. Good thing it's a deep socket, so the heat has farther to travel before it's too hot. Okay. This is where we put that down on a workbench or non-flammable surface to cool off. And once it's cooled off, we will clean this up in the wire wheel, and it will be ready to reassemble as well. Okay, so as you can see here now, we have the battery clean, the battery tray is clean, the battery cover is clean, the J-bolt for the battery hold down and the small, shorter 10mm bolt have also been wire wheeled and cleaned up and are ready for reassembly. Don't forget to throw your paper towels away. Don't leave them laying around with that battery acid or even the battery cleaner on it. And be sure to handle the battery carefully. Okay, so I guess we'll first start by installing the battery tray. Let me get you guys repositioned. So here comes the battery tray. Make sure that properly seats. We'll move this back up out of the way. Push that out of the way there. By the way, this spot right down here, that's where the J-bolt hooks in. Up next comes the battery. Want to avoid dropping it, so we want to make sure we grab by the top so that we can set it down gently. Then next comes our cover. It is position dependent. I believe it goes on this way. Make sure that fits down, fits into our tray proper. Battery hold down should look about like that. So this is where got my cleaned up bolt here. I'm going to go ahead and move the battery over closer a little bit here. I'm going to get it started, but I'm going to leave it loose. Same thing for the J-bolt. I'm going to put it in. I'm going to get it down. Need to make sure that I hook the hole. Okay, there it's hooked. So now I'm going to hold it up with one hand behind the battery. I'm going to spin this down so it doesn't fall out on me. That's why I wanted to clean the threads so it's easy to reassemble here. Make sure that's lined up. And then I can use my ratchet. We can start snugging stuff down. Wrist tight is all we need here. You don't need to be He-Man. We just need to make sure it's snug. I don't want to bend the bracket either. I just want to make certain that it's snug and not going to go anywhere. And you can see here, I'm just using a couple fingers here to snug it up. Okay. So with that done, push my clip back down. The inside of my positive terminal is clean. My battery positive post is clean. And I'm about to make connections to the battery. So I want to do positive first. Push that on. And then I will snug it up. Being careful not to touch ground with my ratchet, so I got to be careful I don't swing it too far, and make sure that my hand is in between it and ground surfaces. And then we just snug this up too. It doesn't have to be super tight. Okay, just snug it up. We're going to get our negative back out. We're going to want to fit that. Snug this up, being sure not to hit our positive. Again, just snug is all that's necessary here. Make sure it's clean tight. Don't rotate. And then this is where we use some of our battery terminal protector after everything's cleaned and made. And we're going to put a few light spritzes on our terminal. That'll help seal up our connection, reducing future corrosion and extending the life. So at this point, we are down here where we've reassembled the cables. We haven't mixed anything up because positive to positive, negative to negative. Okay. Instructor check and conversation. We're going to go ahead and remove the memory saver and try to start the engine. Okay, so here we are back at the booster pack and the memory saver. If I switch my booster pack off, the light should remain on because now there is power from the battery once again. We can see that my light is still on so that I know that the computer still has power. So I'll pull that, carefully pull it there, pull this out without wrecking the cable. Carefully lift out the booster pack. Avoid damage or marking up the customer's car. And this is where we fully get into the car. I'll bring you guys over. Here, fuel pump prime, got the post test of our dash. And then we'll check underneath, make sure that all hands and people are clear from underneath the hood. Note the battery light on the left gauge. We want to make sure that that goes out once the engine starts. So the battery light went out, indicating that our system voltage is sufficient and our charging system is charging. Great. By the way, take note of the mileage for our lap sheet. 141,420 miles. All cleaned up and safe. And that concludes our battery service lab. Any questions? Find me in the shop or send me an email. Thanks for watching.